Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Field Trip Energy with Lucy Drew. This week, we are going to be discussing psychic equivalency. Let's dive in. Have you ever just been certain in your head that somebody in particular had it out for you, and they have for a while? And then months later, you might have had a radically honest conversation with them, only to find out that you were very wrong and it was a huge misunderstanding. Well, you are not alone. And that assuredness that you felt without factual evidence is what we like to call psychic equivalency. Psychic equivalency is when we feel our innermost emotions or our innermost certainties are what must be occurring in the outside world, especially in regards to others. But can you imagine if everybody's internal world was reality? It wouldn't be possible. This is a good way to reframe your mind. Here is a great personal example of a psychic equivalency that happened this week in my life. I had a somatic therapy session, which is through the body, almost like yoga in a lot of ways. And with my therapist, we released around a decade's worth of anger that just came out of my body. And the aftermath of this experience is complete exhaustion. If you can imagine things that have been bottled up for a decade and then suddenly there's this huge release, well, your body's going to be tired. So I, right after that, had class for my master's program. I show up to class, and usually when I'm a little bit more energetic, that's just my personality. I'm a little bit bright and bubbly. And this was probably my face, most likely, throughout the whole class, because I'm exhausted. Well, my professor at the very end said, "Hey, Lucy, can you stay after?" And I was like, "What? Sure." So I stay after class, and my professor was so kind and had asked if I was upset with her because of her critique of my last assignment. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, I felt your insight was so helpful, and I really enjoyed the project, and it made my assignment that much better having your input." And I said, "I have to be fully transparent here. I just had a somatic therapy session and I am physically and mentally drained. I have 0% left." I said, "I can hardly even move my arms, it feels." And so we got a good laugh out of that, and we ended up on the same page. Now, can you imagine what would have happened if my professor did not address me? Chances are the quarter would have marched on, and maybe my feedback from her would have started to get slighted or stilted, because she's constantly going to be in her head thinking, "Oh, geez, Lucy does not take critique well, and the last time blah, 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 blah." This is a perfect example of psychic equivalency. In her mind, I was really upset with the critique. This was not even close to being the case. So the lesson learned here, and the way to combat this, is radical honesty and perfecting communication, interpersonal communication, even if it is excruciatingly uncomfortable. Even if you have a history of confronting people and it never goes well. Maybe you have difficult people in your life and you say, "Man, every time I clock someone's mad at me, I go up to them, sure enough, they are. And then I get an earful and a mouthful and big emotions." A great exercise to train yourself in moments of swirling out of control, convincing yourself, "Oh, I know this person is doing this," or "I know this is this, is to sit back, again with breath work, as I always will promote. Take a deep breath and say, "What are the craziest possibilities of which I do not know? Have I fact-checked here? Have I checked in with the person that I'm so certain of? Have I had a radically honest conversation?" With this kind of Socratic questioning, our brain can rewire and combat psychic equivalency. Now, I am a highly intuitive person, and if you are not, this might register in a way where you're going, "Ooh, really woo-woo, kind of moogie-foogie." But there have been so many times in my life where I've had a gut feeling, I've gone with it and reaped the rewards, just because I kind of tuned in and tapped into a greater power up here. This tends to get confusing with the notion of psychic equivalency, because sometimes you can just get a feeling and you just know. So how do you differentiate these spiritual intuitions aside from a thought that might not be that helpful and actually kind of detrimental. The best way to discern between psychic equivalency and an actual intuition is stopping and asking yourself, am I feeling a wave of anxiety with an urgency to act now? And if I don't, it'll slip away or something's gonna happen, this now urgency. Or do I feel I can sleep on this and it feels almost calm in my knowledge? I've fact-checked the outer world and I'm getting this overwhelming sense of calm. This is the difference. The first is anxiety, this urgency, act now. And the second is intuition. For me, it's easy to get wrapped up in intuitive land. I'm like, oh, I'm so tapped in. I think I get it. I think I know everything. I'm like, geez. Once I sit back and reflect on something like psychic equivalency, I am humbled and relieved. That's why I personally find something like atheism to be exhausting. Because you sit back and you're assuming you know for fact there's not a greater power. Whereas something like being agnostic is a bit more sitting in the unknown, questioning, saying, I'm not really sure what I believe, but I can't say for certain there's nothing out there. With psychic equivalency, you don't want to be a prisoner of your own mind. There are so many times where maybe you face rejection and on the other side of it, months later, you've gone, thank the Lord. Always remember there are elements at play and in motion that we know nothing of. And what a relief. Take your mind off the pressure a little bit. And remember, we don't know everything. Thank you so much for tuning into Field Trip Energy, and we will see you next week.